We're big fans of Rolexes, and the most iconic Rolex in the world has got to be, do you agree, the Daytona,
Totally,
Jonathan?
the Daytona. It's a legend, absolute legend.
Oh, and Jonathan here has a cracking example of a Daytona. Tell us stuff about the Rolex Daytona we don't know.
Well, it's probably it is the most valuable watch on the vintage market.
Is it?
In that Paul Newman's recently sold for $17.5 million.
Well, that's
So
an easy statement then, isn't
yeah,
it?
it is.
I didn't,
it
is
is.
that seriously $17.5 million?
Yes, yes.
Now, okay, so what year was that Daytona?
That was mid-60s with quite an unusual dial that became known as the Paul Newman.
Right.
Because it was quite an unusual dial. It's hard to describe really, but it had his name to it, so to the fact that Paul Newman was coming up for sale.
Right,
And
okay.
I think,
That's a double whammy, isn't it?
but people were sort of saying maybe it might get to $5-6 million. And it kicked off at 10. First bid was $10 million.
That's
incredible.
remarkable. I mean, we know that Daytonas are fabulously valuable. You know
Yes.
that. So when were they first introduced?
63.
63. So let's say a 65 vintage Daytona. Well, hang on. What year was the Paul Newman?
Not sure.
60s, though.
60s, yes.
60s watch. So
yeah.
a mid-60s
It was
Daytona.
yes. It was in the manual wind version. That's
And what would that be worth as an ordinary Daytona?
well, if you took the plain black dials, you might be lucky and be able to buy one for around about 50,000.
50 grand. So because Newman owned that watch, it added 17 million
Yeah, but
pounds.
his was a rare dial, so if you've got a Paul Newman dial Daytona, I've seen them go well in excess of £100,000.
Okay, still 17 million more
Yes.
because of the Paul
Yeah.
Newman had it on his wrist.
Wonderful provenance with an engraving on the back.
It's unbelievable,
It
isn't it?
is.
There is a lot of money out there for very special pieces, and I think what we want to get across as well is you may well have a very special watch, and Jonathan here knows all about Daytonas and all sorts of vintage watches, and he'll tell you that the difference between a watch being worth, well, there's an example, 100,000 or 17 million is a connection to a famous person. But if you bring it down the scale a bit, what other things should people be looking out for on a Daytona to make the difference?
They're all extremely collectible. I think you and I both know that you can't just go into a shop and buy one,
Yeah,
which
I know.
sounds ridiculous.
It does sound ridiculous, and I don't know whether you know this, but a new Daytona is what, 10, 12,000
Yeah,
quid?
10 grand.
List price, but you can't buy one. That's the bonkers thing.
Yes.
If we couldn't go into Rolex and buy one today.
No,
They're
no.
just not available, are they?
And the waiting list can last for years and years. You could be, they say, up to 30 years on a waiting list. Because they get maybe 2 a year.
Right.
And
So
that's
it
it.
doesn't make any difference what the list price is.
No.
If you go, so, okay, so a new one, 10 or 12, what have you got there? What year's that?
This is a lovely one. This one is from 95.
Okay, so a modern vintage.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, really iconic. It's the watch that they made with an automatic self-winding movement.
Yeah.
Started in 1988 with this one.
Yeah.
They didn't make a movement. Rolex didn't make an automatic chronograph movement. So it's only one watch in their range. So they had to outsource, and they outsourced to really the best movement you could get, which was Zenith's El Primero.
I didn't know that. So
Yeah.
Rolex didn't make the movement.
No,
Right.
they bought it in. It's a lovely slim case. You'll see how slim this is.
Yeah.
That's just part of the charm of the El Primero,
Okay.
which has an interesting history in itself, in that Zenith made it right in the heart of the quartz crisis, really. Came out in 1969. By the early 70s, Zenith had gone. They'd been bought out by the Zenith Electric Corporation in America.
So hang on, the quartz crisis is really the introduction of the battery-powered watch.
Yes. It was thought that they would take all mechanical watches were going to be obsolete overnight because you could get a battery, they were more accurate, you get digital, you know what it was like. And so the El Primero was really sort of pensioned off before it really got started.
And that's the name of the movement.
That's the movement, yeah. So much so that they told the guys in the factory to scrap all the machinery,
Really?
which would have been horrendous because the investment in making these things was just incredible.
Okay, so they scrapped all the kit?
No, one of the guys that was so behind the movement and was so emotionally involved with the development, hid everything. They hid all the machinery, all over the factory, up in the roof, all
You're
over the
joking.
place. Yeah, because he couldn't see himself scrap it. And thank God.
What a guy.
Yeah, because in the early 80s, Zenith had taken over again, and the new owners say, we would love to do an El Primero, we've not got the funding for it, we'd never be able to do it.
Can't tool up.
No, but that's when he put his hand up and said, well, actually.
All over the factory. That's fantastic.
And that led to Rolex putting a huge order in for El Primero movements for their new Daytona.
The new Daytona. Okay. So I didn't know this. So 63, the first Daytona.
Yeah.
This would be classed as the new Daytona.
Yes, absolutely. You've got modern things like the sapphire crystal glass that you can't scratch.
Of course, yes.
You know.
I just thought that was an evolution.
No, it came out completely new. It looks totally different to the 60s one. It's bigger. The interesting thing again with it, the El Primero always has the date down here, just in this corner here, between the 7 and the 8. That wouldn't work on a Rolex because they always like to put the bubble on.
Yes, of course.
So it would look as though the bubble had slipped off the dial, so they've just simply put a dial over it, so there's no Daytona with a date. And that's the reason, because it was the El Primero.
Well, there you go. You learn something new every day. I've been lusting after a Daytona for years. I should have known this. So mid-90s, what would that cost new equivalent roughly in the mid-90s?
When these came out, they were 3,500.
3,500 quid.
And instantly went grey market to 7,000. It was a double your money if you got one.
Even in those days?
Even in those days, yeah.
Okay.
They've always been rare. They've never been in a window. You'd never see one in a shop window.
No. It's a real oddity. How many things can you list that actually have a list price, but you can't buy it? And if you did get a chance to buy it, it would be on the grey market, and it would be probably double the price.
Yes.
Of the list.
Yeah, new
It's
Daytonas
bonkers
are doing
beyond
20,000.
belief.
I know. And to try and explain that to somebody is virtually impossible.
No,
but
exactly.
Unfortunately, it is the way.
So how do these Rolex dealers deal with it when you or I or someone else walks in and says, right, but I've seen a Daytona listed £10,000, I want one. They say, what? You can't have one.
Yeah, I believe that they're now trained to sort of let people down gently.
It's bonkers.
It
So
is.
the only way someone can buy a Daytona really, unless they're going to wait 30 years, is on the second-hand market. So that's 25 years old, $3,500 new. How much is it today?
They're becoming really sought after because of the movement. So something like this is going to be around about £17,000.
And that one I don't think is for sale, is it?
No, this is one that we sold a while back and we borrowed it, so we can share it for today.
Well, just don't give it back to him. That's what you need to do.
Well, they'll make money. You know, these things do. They're just such a wonderful investment.
Okay, and the next 10 years, what's the prediction?
Well, they're just on the up. The up.
Just keep on going.
Well, the new one's doing £20,000 now. The new one's doing more than this. And it's a £10,000 watch, as you say. So.
And of course, with the Newman watch being sold for 17 million, that must have given the whole Daytona market a real injection of adrenaline.
The whole Rolex market, really. The Rolex sports watches. We've seen it with Submariners, Explorers. It's amazing.
And what about these fakes that are coming in these days? I mean, apparently there's some very good Rolex fakes. And I don't mean good as in they're great watches. I mean just good quality fakes.
Yes.
I mean, years ago, it was easy to tell a fake Rolex because it was just so bad.
Yeah.
Where now, by all accounts, some of them are so good that they're catching people out. What's the top tip?
You've got to get them checked out. If you don't, the box and papers or whatever, you've got to have it checked out by a Rolex dealer, really.
Yeah.
They've got to get the back off. They're even doing vintage ones. They're baking dials to make the luminosity aged. It's phenomenal.
Yeah,
you've got to be very careful.
Yeah, it's because, of course, people of money, anything in the world of art, antiques, vintage watches, anything that increases in value dramatically is possibly going to be fake.
Yes.
So if it feels or looks too good to be true,
there's a reason for it.
There's a very good reason
for it.
Very good reason. Cracking. I bet you wish you could offer that for sale because you could sell it in a nano, I suppose.
Yes, we've got people waiting for them.
Oh, what a business. But the problem is you can't find them.
Exactly.
There you have it.
Yeah, we've got to use all our contacts everywhere to try and find these watches.
Okay, so for anybody out there that might have a Daytona or looking for a Daytona,
give us a ring.
Just give him a ring. He'll sort your problems out. Might take 30 years, but he'll sort them.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Jonathan, as ever, great to see you.
Yes, you too, David. Thank you.
Thanks for watching, everybody. From me, David Harper, goodbye. And from
Me, Jonathan Scatchard. Bye-bye.
cheerio. Perfect timing.
Yeah, just finished.